PhotoJoseph. I'm your host today. If you have not yet attended a webinar for DxO with me, let me give you a little bit of a rundown of how this works. I tend to move pretty quickly, and if you missed any of it, you will be getting a copy of this in your inbox about 24 hours after this ends. So you will be able to rewatch any portion of this that you miss. Also, this will eventually get up on the YouTube channel for DxO, but I don't know when that'll happen, but you will have your own copy in 24 hours after this is over. If you have questions as we go, and I certainly encourage questions, drop them into the chat room at any time. I will be jumping back and forth from the chat room to the demo throughout the presentation today, trying to get those questions in where I can. If for any reason I do not get to your question, either I miss it or there's too many of them and I can't get to yours, or I don't know the answer, that's always possible too, then feel free to hit me up on social media. I am pasting into the chat right now how to find me. This is my Twitter, my Instagram, and my YouTube channel. Obviously, I would love a follow and a subscribe everywhere. But if you hit me up on Twitter, that is the best place to get any questions to me afterwards, just at PhotoJoseph absolutely everywhere. I would be more than happy to do my best to answer your question. And if I can't, then of course I will find out from DxO. I'll loop them in and get you a proper answer. With that said, I think that is all the housekeeping. What we are doing today is a demo of DxO's Nik plugin, Silver Efex Pro 2, which is, I have to say, I've been using this plugin for a long time. It is my personal favorite tool for doing black and white conversions. I've been using this thing for ages. I absolutely love it and adore it, and I think it's a super, super flexible and powerful tool. So it's kind of fun for me to show this one to you. Now, I've already done quite a number of demonstrations over the last couple months with the Silver Efex Pro. And so today what I'm going to do is I will certainly give you a basic tour, show you where everything is, so in case you've never seen it before, you understand what we're looking at. But a lot of the way today is going to flow is essentially I'm going to take a series of my photos, and I've got, you can see on the bottom of the screen, quite a few of them here set aside already. We'll see how many we actually get through, and just do a black and white conversion the way that I would personally want it to be. And I'll discuss my thought process through it. You're going to see some experimentation. Granted, I've already done this. I kind of know where I'm going to go with these, but there might be some surprises along the way. I might change my mind at some point from what I decided earlier. But the point is that we are going to explore these basically as if I was doing these for real for myself. That's kind of that is the plan of action here. With that said, let's see if there's anything going on in the chat room before we go in, and then we will jump in. Lewis Rothman has a great question to start. What is the difference between contrast and soft contrast? Contrast is very, very harsh. Contrast effectively takes your black point and your white point and spreads them out. The soft contrast reaches a little bit farther in. It's more like a shadow and a highlight as opposed to black point and white point, and stretching those around. So the change, the difference tends to be a bit more subtle. Hello to David in South Carolina, to you too. All right, let's get going here. I'm going to be working out of PhotoLab today by popular request. Last few presentations I did were based out of Photoshop, and some people said, hey, can you please use PhotoLab because I don't have Photoshop? And it's important to know, and I'll repeat this, what I said before, we are demonstrating the plugins. And so how you get to the plugins is largely irrelevant. The advantage of using Photoshop is that you can create a smart object, which means that the filter becomes a smart filter. The advantage of a smart filter is once you hit apply, you can go back in and re-edit it at any time. But today, because it's been requested, I will be using PhotoLab, which of course comes with Nik Collection 2. The thing to realize, the thing to keep in mind is that once you hit OK out of the plugin, that is a permanent application back into that TIFF file. Your original is always untouched. We're going to be working from raw files today, and every time we go into the plugin, a TIFF file gets generated. That plugin opens that TIFF file, but whatever we do to that, when we hit OK, it's baked permanently in. So very important differentiation, which is why I personally use Photoshop a lot for these sorts of things. But of course, not everybody has Photoshop, which is why the Nik collection now comes with PhotoLab. All right, enough babbling. Let's get going. I'm going to start with this one that's on screen right now. Nice, simple yellow field, kind of stormy clouds in the background. We can see, I guess we'd call it more fog than storm clouds, but there's some texture in there. Like if you look closely, you can see there's some stuff in there. So we're going to see what we can get out of it. I'm actually going to start by cropping this picture because my shadow is brilliantly in this photo, and I actually quite like, let's get rid of the aspect ratio here. I quite like a more cinematic look to this photo. It just has that kind of cool cinematic feel to it. And just stay right about that. Let's put the horizon right in the middle. We're going to break every rule of photography, and we're going to put that right in the middle there. And I am also going to do a tiny bit of retouching. There is some weird little things. I don't know, I have no idea what those are actually. I'm also going to make my mouse a bit bigger because everybody always asks and I always forget, but let's do that right now. There we go. and I may have to bring it smaller if I use brushes, but I don't think we can use brushes anywhere. Okay, so I'm gonna get rid of these little spots in here. The DxO Photolab does have a retouching tool. I will tell you it's not the most advanced retouching tool in the world, but it works, it's here. So let's just kind of click over that and retouch that out. Oh, I know I realized what I've just done is change my brush size so I don't actually know what size this is, but there we go. If I paint over it, just paint over it and it basically goes pop, gone, and there's another little spot up there. Let's get rid of that. And there, okay, just getting rid of those little white things. I don't know what they were. Okay, close the retouching tool. Let's zoom back out. Baseline photo. I like the photo, right? It's this nice kind of calm but stormy look to it. I got this one lone tree. As a matter of fact, I'm going to cut out that tree over there because that'll make it truly a one lone tree. Make that a little bit more, there we go. They got to be a little bit more dramatic for the photo like that. Very good. And now I'm going to send it off to Silver Efex Pro. So from Photolab to do that, you have a custom button or custom, is that the word I'm looking for? You have a button down here. It says Nik Collection. Click on that and it shows all your Nik filters. If you've never seen this before, you can click on settings and choose the file format that will be sent to the Nik plugins. As I said, it's going to generate a TIFF. You could have it generate a JPEG, although honestly, I really don't know why you would do that. I still have not come up with a use case for that, but it's there. But we're going to do TIFF. You could choose between 8 and 16-bit TIFF. I would say unless you know that all of your detail, all of your data, your highlights, shadows, and everything are pulled well within the 8-bit color space, and you're not going to be doing anything extreme with the file, especially working in black and white. I think it's pretty safe to go to 8-bit, but you know, it's one of those things, storage is cheap. Let's just not risk it. Let's go for 16-bit. We can always convert it down again later if we need to. So there's a 16-bit, and that's the default setting, and we're just going to leave it like that. So those are your settings. Once you set those, they're sticky, and every time I click on a button like the Silver Efex Pro 2 button, it generates the TIFF. You can see a little progress down here, that arrow and the little blue progress bar that is about to climb up, and that tells us the progress. And it just takes a few seconds or less if you're on a faster computer, and off we go. This computer, by the way, is not a fast computer. This is quite an old iMac that I'm using, but it gets the job done. Alrighty, let's go up here to the preset library. Let's start with a basic tour, again, for those of you who are not yet familiar with Silver Efex Pro. I would imagine many of you are, so we won't take too long in here, but let's just give you the rundown. On the left-hand side, you have your presets, and we're actually going to come back to these and click through a bunch of them. We have a bunch of presets. They're broken into different categories, classic and modern and vintage. You can mark favorites. If you want to mark a favorite, you can do that on any one by clicking on this little star next to it. There we go. Click on the little star. You see the star becomes yellow, and that now shows up in your favorites list. And then if you're new to Nik Collection 2, then the En Vogue category are all new presets. They're actually really nice new presets. When I did the Nik 2 launch demos, we spent a lot of time going through those presets, and there's some really good ones in all of the plugins. But that's what that is. Anyway, then across the top, you've got a preview window that will show you the original, show you a split view. So let's just do a quick preset so we have something different. So do a split view, which you can rotate. So you can go landscape vertical on the split, and you can move that split as you like. Or you have a side-by-side, which you can also rotate. So depending on the aspect ratio of your photo, you can do that. Pretty cool to be able to do that side-by-side like that. But also at any point, you can be at the main view and just hold down the compare button, and that will show you the original. On the right hand, up here, sorry, up here in the top right, you have zoom control. So if I click on that, it'll automatically zoom into 100%. Click to zoom back out. I can change that, say 200%, and then it'll zoom in and out, which is a nice quick way to be able to pop in and out of your scene. And then once you've done that, you have a navigator up here as well. You also have a little light bulb icon that allows you to change the color of your background, but for the most part, gray tends to work best. All right, then on the very right, we have, of course, all the controls. Let me collapse all of these and give you a tour through them. Collapse, collapse, collapse. There we go. We'll even collapse that one at the bottom. So every Nik plugin has its own different ways of working. Some of them you have effects that you load from the left-hand side over to the right-hand side. Some of them you have to load them a little bit differently than others. And I always explain to people that the reason things are so different throughout the Nik collection is because these filters were originally developed over the course of many, many years. This wasn't a single product launched by a company when it was first launched, when it was first created. Every plugin had, I don't know, let's call it a year's development between them. I'm kind of making that up. I don't really know, but it was time. It took time. And as the plugins changed, there were different ways of doing things, but also some plugins just require different methodologies. But this one, Silver Efex Pro, has all of your controls. Everything you need is always available, always on over here on the right-hand side. There's no additional filters to add. The presets over here, whenever I click on any of these, all these are doing is changing the settings in here. So if I open global adjustments, for example, as I scroll through and click on different presets, you'll see those sliders changing. That's all these are, is presets. I guess it's kind of your side over here. But anyway, on the left, it's the presets that load up different settings on the right. That's all there is to that. You can go in here and turn on or off individual categories, but for the most part, you pretty much are always leaving them on, and if you don't make any changes to it, then it's not affected, right? So if I go back in here and I do if I click on neutral, by the way, that's a reset. This neutral one, this 000 preset, that's everything off. And if we look in here, all of our sliders are at 0. And so with all those at 0, if I toggle this on or off, it makes no difference to the image because by default, everything is just off. So that's the way that works. And now within each one of these categories, there's a reset button. So I can, like, let's say I bring the brightness up a little bit and the contrast down a little bit on here. If I click this reset, it's going to reset everything in that category. If you want to reset the whole image, then you go over here and just click on the neutral preset. Also, when you're adjusting these sliders, if you want to reset a single slider, any of these can be double clicked on to reset that slider back to its default position. So within all these controls, you have, when you first launch it, it might look like this, where you have just basic brightness, contrast, and structure. Doesn't sound like a whole lot, but then you tickle this open and you see, oh, there's brightness, but then there's separate brightness sliders for highlights, midtones, and shadows, and a dynamic brightness, which is kind of an intelligent brightness, if you will. Same thing with contrast. You open that, and there's amplify whites, amplify blacks, and soft contrast, which someone had asked about already. And then there's structure and so on and so on. So a lot of these have more granular controls. Just look for that little triangle, pop that open, and you're going to find more to it. These top setting here is called global adjustments. As the name implies, anything you do here affects the entire image. Underneath that, the next category is selective adjustments, and this is where the control points come in. So in the event that you are not yet familiar with control points, allow me to explain. A control point is effectively a mask that is built in real time when you drop the control point onto a part of the image, and it bases the mask, it builds the mask based off of the luminance and the chrominance of that part of the image. So that is the brightness values and the color values of the original source image, and that is how it builds its mask. And it builds the mask in real time. And you can preview that by, well, let's go ahead and add a mask into the sky here. You can preview that by clicking on this little checkbox here next to the mask button. And as you can see here, I can change the size of this, and it is a radial, it's not a radial gradient, it's like a radial sphere of influence, if you will, two-dimensional sphere, I guess you call it a disk of influence. And you can see here that it has selected the sky because the sky is quite flat and all the same, but then it hasn't hit the ground. And if I can bring it down here onto the ground, it's going to select the ground and not the sky. And you can see as I move it around different parts of the ground that get selected because the ground is not one solid color, right? It is varying shades of yellows and browns and so on. So these masks are super easy to create and allow you to very quickly isolate certain parts of the image, which is pretty cool. You can add multiple control points. As you saw, you can change the size of them. And once you've created one, let's hide the mask, you can do things like adjust the brightness of just that region in there. Now, there's always going to be a little bit of spill into surrounding regions, but that's part of the way it's designed because it is meant to look very, very natural. Unlike as if you had gone in there with a pen tool and done an outline, like if I drew a marker outline, or what do you call it, marching ant outline around the horizon line here, and I adjusted just the foreground, it probably wouldn't look that realistic unless you're like really, really good with the pen tool. You got to go in there and have some kind of feathering and so on. That all happens automatically in here. Now, I'm not going to say that the control point is always the single best way to do a selection ever, but for the most part, it works incredibly well, and it makes it really, really easy to adjust the areas that you want to. To get rid of it, just click on it, select it, and then you can hit delete. And you can have multiple control points, and you'll see as we move forward, we're going to be doing that. Then let me collapse these to keep this tidy. Under that, we have our color filters. These are meant to mimic the color filters that you would put over your camera lens if you were doing traditional black and white film photography. So what would look like if you shot through a red filter, orange filter, yellow, green, and blue filter. And if you want to know more about color filter photography, color filters in black and white photography, understand the science behind it, just Google search for color filtered black and white photography, and you'll find some great articles that explain what this does. I'm not going to get into all that now, but there's plenty of information out there. Then we get into a really fun category called film types. One of the really sweet, cool things about Silver Efex Pro is it is designed to mimic certain film stocks. So you get photos out of this that look like film, look like they were shot on film, which is pretty awesome. And if you look under the categories in here, you'll see it's not a massive selection of black and white films. Obviously, they're all black and white, but there is a good selection of all the most common ones, and then I'd wager a few you probably haven't heard of as well. So if you go through these, you can see as I scroll the mouse over what that image would look like, simulation obviously, but what it would look like if it was shot on that type of film. So if you used to shoot film and you're like, oh man, I used to love Kodak 100 T-Max Pro, man, that is beautiful. Well, if you select this, it's gonna look pretty familiar, all the way down to the grain pattern. If we go to a big one like 3200, the T-Max 32, we can see a real heavy grain pattern in here. Let me set this to 100% zoom, and we'll zoom into that. And that grain pattern pretty well mimics what you would have gotten shooting T-Max 3200, which is kind of neat. But you can completely control it. So you go, you know what, I love the look, but it's too much grain. So you've got your grain sliders here. And this grain slider is kind of funny the way it works because it seems backwards. You don't bring it down to 0. If you're bringing it down to the lowest setting is 1, the grain gets more. You bring it up to the top and the grain goes away. And so what you're seeing here is, you notice it says grain per pixel. So it's a simulation of how many grains of grain are happening per pixel. And so if you bring it down to one grain per pixel, well, that is a whole lot of, that's a very big piece of grain, if that makes sense. If you take it down smaller, like 255 per pixel all the way down to 500 per pixel, at 500, it is essentially gone. The grain has disappeared, but as soon as you back off of that, you'll start to see a little bit of grain coming in. And in case I forget to say it later, I'll say it now. Whenever you're doing grain adjustment, you always want to look at your image at 100%. If I'm looking at the image right now, I'm at 100% and I adjust the grain and I get to what I feel is comfortable, that looks good. When I print this, that's what it's going to look like. However, if I zoom out of this thing and I take it and I go, oh yeah, let's make the grain really big and strong like so, because that's the look that I like. By the time it prints, it's going to look overly done. It's going to look like a lot more grain to this. And to take this a step further, and this is something I covered in length in a previous webinar, but I'll just say it again here. If you are going to print, or if you're going to put this online, or whatever you're going to do, if you're going to do things like add grain to it, you should do that at the size of the final file. Meaning, if you're going to print an 8x10 at 150 dpi, we'll do the math on that. So 10 inches, 150 dpi, that's 1500 pixels. Scale your image to 1500 wide or tall before you bring it into Silver Efex Pro to do the grain. Even if you do the grain as a last pass, do that at the very end. That will give you the most accurate results when you go to print. Now, for the most part, most people, it really doesn't matter. You just make something that looks good. When you print it, it looks great. You're all good and happy. But if you want to be meticulous about it, you do it as a last step, or one of the last steps, before you go to print. It's just like sharpening. You sharpen at the final size that you're going to be outputting. Same thing if you're going to go online. If you're going to put an image on Instagram, so looking at this picture right now, let's say I decide that grain looks really good. By the time it gets small enough to Instagram, it's going to look more like this. And then you're going, oh, well, hold on, I can't really even see the grain in there anymore. So what you would end up doing, if you're doing a smaller image for Instagram or Facebook or whatever, is you output that, render out a version of that at that smaller size, and then come in and add the grain, because then you go, oh yeah, see now that look, that's how I want it to look. And I'm simulating this obviously by scaling the window, which is not terribly accurate, but it gives you the idea. At this smaller size, I might feel like that looks really good, but then if I was to look at this zoomed in big, it's horrific. It's just way too much grain, right? So that's just something you might want to keep in mind. Okay, let's see here, enough about that. Then you have sensitivity filters, we'll come into those later. You have your curves in here, and this is all part of your film type sliders. And then the last section is finishing adjustments. You can do color toning, so you can add toning over your images if you want, sepia toning, splits, cyanotype, that sort of thing. And you have other finishing touches like vignetting, you're changing the shape of the vignette, burning the edges, so you can burn the top, bottom, left, or right, so very much like in the dark room. And you can even add borders to it, so if you want to have some kind of a funky print border on there, you can do that as well. So all of this is built in. A lot of these you'll see pop up in the presets, but that is a basic tour of what we've got. Oh, last thing we got in here, sorry, the loop and histogram. Reveal this. By default, it's going to show you the histogram. Let's reset this image. Shows you the histogram, very useful. If you want to look at the loop here, it'll allow you to see a close-up view of whatever part of the image you're pointing at. But another really powerful thing here, and I'm not going to go deep into this today, but one of the really powerful things in here is this zone system. If you want to learn more about how the zone system works on here, go back in the archives, look on YouTube, on DxO's YouTube channel, and look for my webinar on doing black and whites like Ansel Adams. It's a whole thing about Ansel Adams and his zone system, which is what this is, and I talk in depth about how the zone system works, what it means, how to use it. I'm going to use it here just a little bit today, mainly to check that I'm not clipping my brightest highlights, but I'm not going to get into whole zone system adjustments for that. I've already done that. Check out that previous webinar. All right, with that big dump of brain info on you, let me just take a quick look in the comments, questions, and see if there's something else to hit before we move on. Oh, Jeremy Broom's got an interesting question. Do you ever HDR an image before turning black and white to make it more dramatic and punchy? Absolutely, I have done that before. Not for a long time, but I have done that before. If you've got a really, really high dynamic range scene, then that's absolutely a great way to do that. If your scene isn't super high dynamic range and you really can get everything within one single exposure, then it would be a way to make it more dramatic. You have so many tools to really bring out the drama, bring out the contrast that you may not need it, but it will certainly add that extra level of detail and texture into the photo. So yeah, absolutely, it's certainly something to do. And if you were going to do that, if you had shot multiple exposures, you definitely would want to do that HDR blend before coming into black and white, as opposed to doing 3 different black and white versions of 3 different exposures and then blending those, especially when it comes to things like the grain. The grain will just completely mess that up. So do that HDR conversion first, as you have suggested, and then bring it into Silver Efex Pro for black and white. Yeah, absolutely, totally valid way to do. Kenny is saying that image and audio are breaking up and out of sync, significant lag. Uh-oh, people are talking about some issues with the bandwidth. Let me, I'm gonna do a couple things here just to make sure. Let's quit Dropbox, and I'm going to make sure my other system isn't running a backup, but it shouldn't. You know, no matter how many times you set a system to only back up at certain times a day, it decides to kick in when you're doing a webinar. My apologies. Sorry I didn't see that earlier. Hopefully that is going to be better. Charles Simmet is asking, new to Silver Efex, does it support DNG format? I don't remember. I don't think so. No, because DNG is effectively a raw format. So it would have to convert to the TIFF first. All right, someone says that just seeing the talking head, no picture, you need to rearrange your screen within the GoToWebinar interface. You can see, you can change how much of me you see versus how much of the screen. Ray Nickel, is there a preset to create an infrared look? White leaves, dark sky, puffy white clouds. I don't believe there is a preset for that. You believe you would have to create your own. Let's see here, looking quickly through here. I don't see one called infrared. That doesn't sound familiar. I think you'd have to do that on your own, sorry. Pinhole, dark glow, dark pop, highlight fade. Quick, get to the end here. Yeah, I'm not seeing anything. Scan past them, I didn't see one. That doesn't mean it's not there, but I have not seen it. Lewis says, please, at the end of the webinar, will I share the recording? You will get that automatically. For those of you who came in late, you will get a copy of the recording. You'll get a link in your inbox 24 hours after this ends. That is automated by the system. You will have that. All right, let us get back into it. So now we're going to start playing with the image. So I generally, when I'm doing black and white stuff like this, unless I know, sometimes I know what I want to do, right? You come in and you go, this is what I want to do. Off you go. Quite often, though, I come in wanting to play, wanting to explore. There's so many possibilities within this tool set that it's hard to really remember what everything is, or hard to remember what is completely possible. Like, you don't necessarily look at an image and go, oh, I know that I can do this, do that, do the other thing. Sometimes you just want to play, and by playing around, you get reminded of different tools, different capabilities that are in here, and you get inspired to do something different. And sometimes it takes you in a totally different direction than you might have otherwise gone. And the best way to play, for my money, is to just go through the presets. So I'm just going to do that real quick. I'm going to kind of click on individual presets in here, and I can use the keyboard, just hit the down arrow on here to run through these to get some inspiration and see what's in there. When I do this, I look at the grass in the foreground and I think that actually looks really cool, right? Compared to the original, which is quite flat there in the foreground, really making the shadows in there dark, really makes those little strands of dry grass, whatever it is, pop out. I think that looks really cool. Okay, good. I'll keep this in mind. That foreground there has got there's some flexibility. There's some stuff we can do in there. All right, let's see what else is in here. Keep running through these. Okay, at this point I go, wow, there's actually quite a lot of detail in the clouds back there in that fog bank. That's fun. Okay, so maybe I'll get some cool structure to pull out of those clouds. Nice. All right, let's keep on going through. And again, I just love doing this, running through the presets to get ideas. And obviously not every preset works, right? Like in this case, it's all dark. No bueno, I don't like that one. But okay, so I'm not gonna use anything like that. That's kind of cool. I see the heavy grain effect. Nice, okay, cool. Keep on through, look at that. Look at how much detail's coming in the clouds on there. And that actually, kind of like that. It's got that foreground darkening thing going on that I like, and the stuff going on in the clouds. Pretty sweet. Which one is that? It's number 15, full dynamic harsh. Okay, excellent. Good to know. Good to know. Keep on moving through. And so, in fact, you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and mark that as a favorite. Where was that? Full dynamic harsh. Click on the little star there to mark that as a favorite. There we go. So that I don't forget which one it is. And this is a big part of my process. I just go through and I see what these different looks look like. Like from this, I can tell that I probably don't want to go crazy high grain on this one. It doesn't really do anything for me. Again, the clouds coming through. Okay. All right, well, I'm going to go back to that 15. Where was it? There we go. Full dynamic harsh. I dig what's going on there. And let's see if I can get even more out of the clouds, out of that fog bank in there. So first of all, let's see what's gone into it so far. So go to global adjustments and structure. Oh, structure has not even been brought up at all. That's crazy. So all of this is coming from somewhere else. Well, I'm curious. Where's it coming from? Okay, well, let me just close this. It's not going to be selective adjustments because selective adjustments aren't added by presets. Is it in the color filters? Nope, it's not in there. Is it in the film types? Not in there. Must be in finishing adjustments. It's barely in there. Interesting. Turn all these guys off. Oh, it wasn't global. Okay, it was something else in global. Interesting. It's part of the trial and error process. Back into global adjustments. Oh, it's just the contrast. That's all it is. It's just contrast increasing. Okay, interesting. So just a little bit of contrast has brought that detail up in there. Well, let's see what happens if we bring the structure up as well. Let's crank up the structure on this, bring that up, and even more detail comes into that. That's kind of cool. It's a little harsh on the foreground though. I think I've got too much structure happening in the foreground here. Okay, so let's dial this back, and instead of using structure with the global slider, let's go down here to the selective adjustments, grab the control point, drop that on the clouds in here. Let's find out what part of the clouds we're affecting. It's going to get pretty much all the clouds in there, so let's make that a bit bigger in there, really get that cloud area like so. And let's take the structure up just on the clouds. Ooh, kind of cool, right? Kind of creepy, kind of neat. Okay, so this is now interesting. When I first brought the image in, it was very flat. Right, let's do a little compare. Let's do a top to bottom compare. It was very flat. We kind of see there's something back there, but it really wasn't pulled out. Now at this point, I might be surprised by just how much detail has been pulled out of this. Okay, but then you've got to ask the question, well, is there more? Could I pull more out of this? Before actually, I'm just going to cancel. Don't I cancel? Yeah, I'm going to cancel this. I'm going to hit cancel on here. Let's go back to the original image in here. Since we're working in PhotoLab, there is another tool in PhotoLab that is designed to, kind of like the structure, punch through any fog or haze. And if you have an image that's got a little bit of fog in it, a little bit of haze, it'll kind of cut through that. So for example, let's take this photo here and click on that. That helps. There we go. Get this photo here. We can see clearly a bit of fog. You can tell by my photos I really like fog. I'm going to select this, and I'm going to go to, where are we? What am I looking for? Okay, my brain is falling apart. Where not smart lighting, selective, color accentuation, contrast, noise reduction, horizon, crop, smart lighting, that's not what I want, selective tone, vignetting. Where is the tool that I'm looking for? Okay, I am completely losing my mind. Where's the hazing tool? I set up for this presentation on a different system, and now I'm starting to regret that. Oh, right, okay. All right, I just kind of lied to you guys a little bit. I'm sorry. Clearview Plus, that's what I was looking for. It's hidden because this version of PhotoLab is the one that you get with the Nik plugins. This is the PhotoLab Essentials Edition. If you upgrade to the Elite Edition, then you get two primary advantages. You get Clearview Plus and you get Prime Noise Reduction. When I set up this demo, I was on a different system, which had the bigger version installed, so my apologies. We don't have Clearview Plus, but what it does do is it cuts through these clouds. It really kind of, just like the structure slider does, really cuts through that haze in there. What I was going to do was cut through that haze on the image in here, cut through some of those clouds to bring even more detail out, so I could bring even more out in Silver Efex Pro. But I can't do that now. My bad. Sorry. Let's just go ahead and jump back into the plugin where we were, and we'll forget about that little snafu, shall we? Don't tell anybody DxO, okay? Actually, it really is a great tool. It is one of those that might well be worth upgrading if that is something that you are into. But for now, we're just going to go back to where I was with the 15 preset and move on from there. Let's see what's going on in the questions before I move forward. Gary Cottage, if I use a black and white photo without color info, I scan black and white negative, will Silver Efex Pro still work? Absolutely. There are certain things that it won't be able to do, like some of the color filter, not color filters, but color, what are they called again? Color, it's under the film types, color, oops, stop scrolling so fast. Sensitivity. The color sensitivity won't do anything, but basically everything else will work the same. Good question. Thank you. Robin Peters, how does Silver Efex Pro 2 film types filter compared to the use of Film Pack 5 add-ons for Photolab 2 for quality and realism? Okay, I would say, first of all, let's keep in mind that this part of NYX Silver Efex Pro was primarily developed by another company before it was acquired by DxO. DxO made something called Film Pack, which is or Film Lab, which is Film Pack, sorry, which is another separate film recreation tool. Film Pack does color films as well as black and white. This one, of course, just does black and white. I have not done a side-by-side of the same film stock to see which one looks more realistic, although I guess I would have to actually have that film stock as well to compare it to. I would say you have more film options with Film Pack than you do in Silver Efex Pro, but if you are, and obviously you can do color there, but if you are focused on making a really good black and white image, you have a lot more black and white control capability in here, and I would worry less about the film, the true film mimicking that you get in Film Pack versus the black and white control you have here. I hope that answer helps. I haven't done a side-by-side though, so I can't really tell. Jeremy says, if you only use Photoshop, can you still set the size of the image you're working on? Yeah, you would. What you would do is save out of Photoshop or any app a file at the size that you want to print or share online or whatever, and then open that one up into the plugin. That's how you would do that. Okay, there's a lot more questions in here. I will certainly try and come back to these. Great tip on resizing with grain. Thank you. Excellent. What is your formula? Okay, what is the formula you just spoke of for DPI by size, by length of image? Oh, I was simply saying, so if you have an image, do easy math. If you're going to print a 10 by 10 inch image at 100 DPI, well, that's just 10 by 100, so it's 1,000 pixels. Usually, if you're going to do a high-end print, you talk to your printer, you find out exactly what DPI their printer is or what type of file they want, and they might tell you 133, they might tell you 266, they might say 300. It's up to the printer. You got to find that out, and then whatever size you want, and there's your math. Easy math. Okay, let's move on. Let's just play with this image a bit more. So I've got this image that already looks pretty cool. I'm going to go back into the control points in here and drop that back on the sky like I had done before. And we're going to add some structure into that, and I can really pull that out. It just looks kind of cool, right? I mean, I kind of dig that. I think it looks really neat. Let's see here. I'm looking at my notes of what else I was going to do in here. Let's add another control point up here, and I dig the contrast, the structure, but it's feeling a little bit dark. Like I want it to be dark and foreboding a bit, but not super dark, if that makes sense. So I'm going to add another control point to a different part of the cloud structure up here where it's a little bit flatter, and just take the brightness up on that. So there, now I'm going to get this kind of brighter at the top of the image. We could even do is kind of put it over in the corner. Actually, this looks kind of cool. Let's put this off in the corner, make that a bit bigger in there. Have this be the darker area over here, and maybe even make that a little darker. And now it really looks like this kind of storm cloud rolling in type of a thing. Kind of like that, actually. I think it's kind of neat. You even get this cool mist showing up on the edge of the horizon there. I'm digging that. It looks really neat. Cool. I like this one as it is. I'm just going to hit save on that one, and let's move on to another photo because I like it. Alrighty. The next photo is, where is it? This was taken in Oaxaca, Mexico. Here we go. I forget the name of this area, but it's this famous kind of, the water's heavy in lime content, I think it's lime, and the hills and the mountains here are all covered in this white rock that's just generated over time because of the lime content of the water, something like that. And it's this beautiful, crazy, cool thing. And so we saw this at sunrise, and it's quite beautiful. I love this, the misty in there, the very still water, but you can see a little bit of ripples in there, the silhouette of the tree. Dig it. Let's make this thing black and white. I'm not going to do anything to it in Photolab. I'm just going to send this straight off to Silver Efex Pro. And while that's happening, let's jump into the question. Interesting. People talking about some had a lot of lag, some did not. Sorry about that with the backup. Hopefully it's better for everybody now. Steve Sattler says, is there a certain order the edit should be made to maximize the quality of the finished image? In many cases, for a lot of things, no, but here's your primary stuff you want to do. Any basic exposure adjustment, recovering of highlights, recovering of shadows, definitely do that before you send it off to the plugin. No matter what tool you're using, whether you're in Photolab, Photoshop, Lightroom, whatever, do your highlight shadow recovery first. Make sure what you're sending off to the plugin is the best possible, meaning it has as much information as possible. Don't try and recover highlights out of your TIFF file. Do your highlight recovery when you're in your raw file. Then you would do all your color effects and work. If you're going to be adding grain and you're going to be printing, then I would go as far as say do your black and white look in this case without any grain. Render out a file at the size that you need for print. Bring that back in and then add your grain, only your grain, and also when you're done with that, you would do your sharpening for print. And that I think it was the last session I did was all about sharpening with using Sharpener Pro. So you can definitely go back and watch that one. I don't know if it's up on the YouTube channel or not yet, but that sharpening should be your last pass. So that's essentially your workflow. Main primary exposure recovery first while you're still in RAW, then go into the plugin for all your effects and fancy stuff. And that can be all you do, but if you're going to do a print and you really want that print to be as supremely good and accurate as possible, do a scale and then come back in for your grain pass if you're doing that and your final sharpening for sure. Excellent. Lag is much better, people say. Excellent. Is there a way to search by the name of the preset, Joni? I'm sorry, there is not. Okay, did this open? It did, there it is. Okay, so again, let's play with the presets. Just select on one and kind of arrow through these and see what these look like. And we're gonna see some interesting things. Like here, I see that there is a huge amount of separation between the tree in the foreground and the background in there. Digging that, I like that a lot on this preset, but then I look at this one and they blend together. I find that fascinating, that by simply adjusting the exposure of certain parts of the image, you can go from the tree being completely lost into the background. And it's not like it's just massively underexposed. I mean, look, the sky's even brighter in this image than it is here, but here we see that background in there. I think this is really, really cool, being able to play with these things and see the difference in the scene. Again, gives you ideas. Like here, I look at this and I go, oh, look, there's actually a lot of detail in the foreground of that tree. The original was silhouetted, right? If we go back to the original photo, it was silhouetted. That was deliberate. That's the exposure that I wanted. This is exposed the way I intended it to be in camera. But now we're looking at it here and you're kind of going, oh, that's interesting. So there's some texture in there. Maybe I want to play with that. It's good to know. Good to keep in mind. If I decide to pull that out, it's there. This is one of the great things about playing with the preset. Oh, even more of it there. And you just kind of keep going through and try different things and see what you like. So in this case, I dig a lot that I can see a big separation of the tree to the background like there. The sky here is a little bit darker than I would like, and I like the separation that we've got in the mountains here. Okay, that's good enough. That's a good start. Let's go back to neutral. Let's start from scratch. You can always start with the preset, adjust from there. I'm going to start from scratch for the sake of the demo in here, and let's make the sky brighter. Okay, so a couple ways I could do it. I could take my highlights and just crank that up, which gives me a little bit brighter sky without affecting the rest of it. It kind of works. That's okay. Let's see what else we've got. If I take the whole brightness up, obviously the whole image goes. That's not what I want. Let's try with a control point. Let's grab a control point, drop it onto the sky in there. Let's take a look at the mask. So yep, make that nice and big. We're getting that sky. And as we get a little bigger, we start to get in a little bit more of these mountains, maybe not so much of what I want. And we notice too, the sun over here is now getting kind of separated, right? The sun is so much brighter than the surrounding area that if I put the control point here, we're not really masking, we're not really including the sun. So what's interesting about this is if let's hide the mask. If I take the brightness up on here, it is going to take the brightness up of the whole sky, but eventually it's just going to blend into that sun and the whole thing becomes kind of a wash. Okay, well, that's interesting. So then what does that tell me? Well, that tells me that maybe I want to position the control point somewhere closer to the sun. Let's try putting it right on the sun. If I put it right on the sun is so different from everything else that all it really has selected now is the sun. Even if I make this really big, you can see it is basically just getting the sun in there. As I start to drag this out though, here's an interesting thing. You can find that point where you get more of the sky, still a bit of the sun, and you have a nice even fall off from the edge of the sun out. So I would say right about there-ish, we've got this really great fall off from the edge of the sun going out and still selecting a bunch of the sky around it, which is going to make the sky right around the sun be brighter. Yes, we're not going to be making the sun itself brighter, but it's already at basically at maximum brightness, so it's probably not going to matter. And if it does, we can always add another control point to it. And let's just see what this looks like. So now with this on there, as I brighten that up, now I'm getting this really nice look, this illusion of that sun being that much brighter. It's even, it's lighting around the tree. You can see the light wrapping around the tree there, just like it was before, just more of it. And we're getting a nice even fall off in the sky, which is very natural looking. So I dig that. I think that looks kind of cool. Okay, great. Let's see what else. Looks like in doing that, I kind of lost some of the separation in these mountains in here. In fact, if I compare back to the original, there wasn't a whole lot there to begin with. So let's see if we can pull some of that up. So I'm going to go and add another control point. Let's add it to that that little mountain, that little part of the hill there. Make that a little bit bigger. Let's see what we're actually selecting. And when I do that, I'm going to find out, if I can just click it, there it goes, that I'm selecting not just that one mountain range, right? It's not just that one, I can't point with the mouse while I'm clicking on the compare here, but you can see there's a bit of an edge in there, which is not a perfect isolation of that, but it is isolating it to some degree. So maybe let's bring this down a little bit so it's not quite so big. And now let's see what happens if I take that and make that a little bit darker. But then let's take another control point, drop it on another part of the mountain there and make that a little bit brighter. And there we go. We can start to see how we're starting to separate these things out a little bit more. Let's try adding a little contrast in there. I don't want to get too much detail. I like the flatness of it. Ooh, a little bit of structure. Oh, look at that. A little bit of structure in there separates the edge. That's beautiful. Okay, great. So maybe I can make this a little bit bigger now, make that a little bit more natural. Let's make this a little bit bigger. See what happens if I take the structure up on here. Is that a good idea? Yeah, probably not. Let's move this over a little bit. There we go. There we go. That's what I'm looking for. I want to see the separation of the hills in there. Perfect. Excellent. Okay, digging it. I like the way that looks. Now let's take a look at the water. Here's something kind of interesting. There's subtle ripples in the water, right? Let's zoom into 100% on here, pan this over. We can see these subtle ripples in the water. I really like the smooth flatness of the whole scene, but there's some cool texture in here. So let's see what happens if we pull some of the texture out. Let's zoom back out, grab another control point, drop it on the water. Before I do anything, I might want to check it. You don't have to check it. I like to check it. Just check on here and see what it's getting, and that's a pretty good mask of just the water. Okay, digging that. Let's take the structure up on there and bring out some of those ripples. Okay, nice. It's really brought those out a little bit. But then you might think, well, hold on. If I add structure and enhance those ripples, what happens if I go the other way? What happens if I do negative structure? Well, watch this. I'll go negative structure, so its default was 0, right? Let's take it down to minus 100, and now look at how much it smoothed out the water. Let's look at this at 100% and move this over a bit here. I'm just going to toggle this one control point on and off. So there's the ripples, and there we've smoothed them out. Kind of neat, right? So I can use the structure for the opposite of its native intent. And I'll tell you right now, this is a great way to soften skin. If you have a model and whatever portrait of someone and you just want to soften the skin, just remove major wrinkles, although it will soften wrinkles, but pores. Generally, especially on a close-up, you tend to see a lot of pores in people's skin. A little bit of negative structure will soften that out, look really, really nice in there. In this case, it works out quite well on the water. So I'm gonna drag this one up here like so it kind of gets more of that area. I'm then gonna option drag this to make a duplicate of it, and it duplicates it with the existing settings. So now I've got both of those. And in fact, what I can also do is select both of those and then group them. Here's the grouping button right here. And now what happens is I have multiple control points that are selected or adjusted by a single slider. So if I take the structure way up or take the structure way down, that is that one that one slider is now affecting both of those control points. And you can have as many control points as you want in a group in there. Kind of cool on there. All right, let's do one more control point. I'm going to add another one to the tree, because remember we found out that there's all that detail in the tree. Let's check the mask. Are we masking the tree? Yep, pretty good job of masking the tree in there. Okay, cool, cool. All right, let's bring the brightness up on that and let's see what happens. Okay, we're definitely getting some detail in the tree in there. That's not what I like. I like the subtle, I like the high contrast, the flatness of it. I like that silhouetting of it. So I'm not going to do this. But if I just move this control point off to the side a little bit, let's actually put it right up here in the Y of that tree, I can do a pretty nice job of adding even more separation from the background in there. And in fact, if I really, really want to nail that separation, I'm going to add another control point back onto the tree. But first, it just protects the tree because I haven't done anything to the control point. It is protecting the tree from all the other control points that I've made. But I can now also take the brightness down on that to really make that tree even darker in there. So that I could even make this a little bit brighter. You see, look at that. As I bring that way up on there, it's totally protecting the tree. It's not getting carried away. Make that a little bit brighter, make it even a little bit darker on there. And now we've got this beautiful separation. Let's do a side-by-side comparison on there. And you see it's subtle, but it's nice. We're seeing the hills back here a bit more. It's a bit brighter in the sky, which I like, more of that blasting sun look on there. The water super smooth. I'm digging it, right? I think it's a cool look. I think it's cool. Let's see if there's any finishing touches we want to do, and then we're going to wrap out of this picture and move on to another one. Let's see here. How about vignetting? Do you want to do a little vignetting on there? Let's try it. Little lens fall off vignette. That could be kind of nice. Maybe a little bit much in there. Let's not make it too heavy on there. I can also change the center point. So notice as I do this, I feel like it's too strong down here on the bottom. So I'll take my center point and we'll drop the center point down there. So now I get more vignetting at the top, less at the bottom. That works out pretty well. With the vignetting, you have so much control. You can make it a circular or rectangular vignette in there, change the size of the overall vignetting on there. Lots and lots of control on that. So dig it. I'm going to hit OK. I'm going to hit save on that one and let that render out. And let's see what's going on in the questions. Oh, Robert says, still haven't gotten Friday's seminar video, just a thank you for attending. Well, that thank you email should have had the link to the webinar. Okay, I will. Okay, Robert, if I forget, tweet me afterwards to remind me. I will go back in and see what happened, and I will resend that thank you and make sure that that's attached. That should have happened automatically, so I don't know what happened there. Interesting. Okay. All right, let's see here. It happens sometimes dragging the slider very far, some halos developing on the edges like bad sharpening. Correct. Example by using a red filter is a way to avoid this. Okay, so what he's saying, or Jens is saying, is that sometimes when you do extreme adjustments, especially with structure, you get a haloing around an image. There's no, I would say the way to protect against that is to either not do that as much or add another control point into where the haloing is and counteract some of that effect. It can take some fine-tuned finessing to get it just right, but that is how I would run that. Alrighty, how do you duplicate a control point? Option drag it is one way to do it. There's also a duplicate button there, but option drag is the way I would usually do it. Ernie is asking, is Clearview better than Lightroom's Haze? Oh, good question. I've never done a side-by-side. I think that they're a bit different in that you will get slightly different results. Some pictures probably are better in Photolab, some are probably better in Lightroom. It's just one of those, like, it depends kind of an image, kind of a slider. Yeah, I would say in principle, they're the same idea and they will work a little bit differently depending on the image you're on. That's gonna be my giveaway there. Floyd's asking, are the images available for practice? No, I wasn't intending to, but if you tweet me, I can provide a couple of them for you if you would like. Okay, let's move on to what images I'm going to do next. Oh yeah, let's try. Actually, no, I'm not going to do that one. I'm going to skip that one. I'm going to go to, because we don't have a whole lot more time, we're going to do something different. Let's do this one here, the flowers. These purple lupine flowers. Not an image you might necessarily think this should be in black and white, but let's see what happens in black and white because it can be kind of cool. Let's pop this over to Silver Efex Pro and see what we get. Once again, I'm going to go through presets, see what the presets give us, see what kind of hints they give us, but we're going to go quick because I already know what I want to do with this. But it's always fun just to see what you get out of them. All right, let's turn off the preview, or the compare, and just gonna bam through these presets real quick. So interesting how the lighter purple is just really popping out against the background, digging that a lot. It's actually where I'm gonna come back to. This high contrast I think is really cool. Smoother high contrast, actually that's kind of like smoother high contrast. No, I like that one better. So number 3, I think that's where I'm gonna come back to. We see a lot of the background here. We see none of the background there. So again, very interesting to see the differences in there. That high key was almost infrared-ish, but I know it's not what that other person was asking for. Well, that's kind of cool, actually. I don't think I went by this one earlier. Really popping out the flowers on there. Still quite dark, but really popping up. But look at the background, how much of that detail is coming through. Neat stuff. I love it. I love the differences that you can get from different filters in here. I mean, you could do 10 different versions of the same photo, and they'd all look like different photos to begin with. It's pretty remarkable. All right, I know what I want. I want this high contrast one. I love this high contrast look. I love how it's blown out the background. In fact, I want to make the background even more blown out. So I'm going to do a control point on here, add a control point, pop that into the sky, probably actually pop that onto the trees back there, and let's just brighten that up. And I want to have this kind of blown out, super foggy look. Let's let just a hint of the trees show through. Yep, just a hint of the tree showing through. Perfect. Now the foreground in here is really, really dark, maybe a bit too dark. Let's try lifting up the shadows a little bit. Let's go for brightness in the shadows, lift up the shadows a touch. So I could do it this way, and you can see how that's lifting up some detail in the shadows there. Don't want to go too far. I actually quite like the high contrast in there. So that's one way to do it. Or what you could also do, obviously it's just going to depend on your photo, grab the control point, drop that into the darkest parts of this scene, and let's bring the brightness up on that and see what we get. Look at how much detail is in there if you want it. Let's go solarized, don't go too far. But I actually like the shadows being quite dark. I think I liked how we got a little bit of brightness out of them from here. So I'll bring that up just a little bit, and we'll leave it like so. Now the color filters I talked about, that was another image I was gonna do. Let me just give me a second here. I'm going to, which photo? I wanna make sure I do this. There's another photo I was gonna use with color filters. Oh, it was that one. Okay, we're gonna go back to another photo, the one that I skipped, because it was something very specific I wanted to show you in there. But in here, let's go back to, not the color filter, sorry, but the film types. We're gonna go to sensitivity, and we have these very dramatic, if we look back at the original photo, purple color in there. So if I look at my sensitivity to purple in here, I can take the sensitivity of the purple up or down, and the blue up or down on there, and you're gonna get this very precise brightening or darkening of that color range in there, which can be really dramatic in there to highlight a specific color range. So in this photo, it works quite well because we have that really dramatic purple and blue colors in there. But the other photo I want to show you will show this even a bit better. So let's open this guy here. So this is one where I was also going to use Clearview, but because I kind of forgot the Clearview is not here, obviously I can't. But Clearview on this image would be pretty remarkable, just cutting through all that haze. But let's just take this photo. Let's see here. Actually, let me do a little bit of curves on here to compensate for some of this lost contrast. Just a bit, not a huge amount. There we go. That's good. And jump into the filter. Now, I'm not going to finish this image because we don't have time, but there's something very specific that I want to show you in here with the color sliders that we were just looking at, and it's focusing on the yellow and the green of the hills in here. And you can see that here in the color version before the black and white pops up. Okay, color's gone. Now we're back to black and white. So here at this point, it's quite flat looking in here, right? If we go back to the original color one, there's this nice separation of the yellows and the greens in there, but we're losing some of that here. It's gotten quite flat. So let's go down to our film types here and take the yellow sensitivity and check that out. As I crank that up, look at how much that yellow feels. It might be feels of flowers in there. It's kind of hard to tell from this distance, but we're getting this really nice pop of that bright yellow in there to really bring that up. I can do the same thing with the green, and maybe I want to make it a little bit darker to make it higher contrast, a little bit brighter in there, or whatever you want in there, right? But you've got that separate color control. There's the rooftops in here that are red. Not all the roofs are red, but a lot of them are. So let's take our red sensitivity, and if I bring that up, we can see the rooftops in here getting brighter, or bring that down to make them darker as well. And it's really cool to be able to do that kind of color control over the image based off of the original colors, but affecting the black and white. And I think this is a really powerful part of the tool that I'm going to leave you with. It's the last part of the demo, and we will get into some more questions here with the last remaining time that we have. But playing with the film sensitivity sliders, those color sensitivity sliders, can be a very powerful way to really make that black and white image pop, because you look at the original color, and but don't be afraid to go back to the original color. Just look back and go, okay, there's greens, oh, there's yellows, oh, there's blues. Those are what I want to compare with, and go into the sliders and start playing with them and see what you get out of it. It's pretty cool what you can do in there. Here, I'll do this just for fun. I'm going to take a control point, pop into the clouds up here, crank the structure up on that, and let's see what we get out of this. It's like crazy. We're gonna add some major structure to this thing. Let's go full board on there. Pull that out. Yeah, look at those clouds in there. Pretty awesome stuff. Okay, all right, that's what I wanted to play with. I'll leave this open in case there's other questions that I need to look at in there, and let me spend the last few minutes trying to answer questions. How do you selective color in Silver Efex Pro? That is with, this thing is right here, isn't it? Yeah, right here, selective color. So let's say I wanted to selectively color this yellow. I drop a control point down there. Let's get rid of the structure and brightness on there and take selective color and crank that up. And there we go. Selective color coming through. So selective color is done with control points. You choose the area you want and drag the selective color slider up. I did a whole webinar on selective coloring, actually. That one's probably up on YouTube by now. Teresa Leggett, I have the old Nick collection from way back in 2011. Time to upgrade. That I'm using with Lightroom. Is it advisable to ditch it and buy the new collection going forward? I certainly would. I'll tell you right up, there's not a huge amount of differences. There are certainly some bug fixes, some minor upgrades, some nice new presets, and you get the PhotoLab 2 with it, the Essentials Edition. But what I'm going to say is, even if you don't feel like you need those new things, if you love these tools, and this is coming from me, I'm not a DxO employee. I'm hired as a contractor to do these things. I'm going to say to you that if you love these tools and you want to see them developed and continue to grow, throw the company a bone, upgrade, even if you don't feel that you need it. You haven't paid for these tools for a really, really long time. You might even have gotten them for free at some point. It'd be nice to upgrade and help put some cash in the coffer so that they can continue to develop these things. Obviously, software development comes at a cost. It can be very nice for the company to have a little extra cash to do these things. And I know for a fact they are working on these tools. They are continuing to develop them. So if you want that to happen, you want that to happen more, so support the message by upgrading. I'll give you that. Okay. Let's see here. Okay, I already answered that question. I downloaded the Nick version 2 collection. When I use it from Photoshop, it is grayed out. Under filters, what could I be doing wrong? It could be that you're trying to open an incompatible file format, although I don't know that that matters from Photoshop. It might just need to be reinstalled. I have heard of some installation issues, especially if you were upgrading from the previous version. So I would run the uninstaller and then reinstall it and see what happens. To make sure that it's not an image file format thing, just open up a file that's like a JPEG or a TIFF and don't do anything to it. Just go straight into the plugin. So you haven't, make sure that you're, pardon me, make sure it's not CMYK. Oh, that's a biggie. They don't work out of CMYK. So if you're in CMYK, that wouldn't do it. But make sure that you're just in an RGB file format. And if it still doesn't work, then it's probably a reinstall. Pardon me. Phil says, lots of my images are made using Fuji cameras, but no presets in PhotoLab for these cameras. Will there be? Okay, well, I'm sorry. Actually, that's not what I was thinking your question was going to be. Presets for Fuji cameras. Are you talking about from the raw processing? So Fuji uses a different type of sensor. I think it's called an X-Trans sensor. I think that's right. And the Nick collection, I'm sorry, the DxO software for the most part doesn't support those those camera types, that sensor type. Pretty sure that is correct. If you go to DxO's website and you just search Fuji, you'll get some articles on explaining why that is. If that's not what you mean, then I'm sorry, I don't really understand the question. Try and rephrase it, which I'm probably not going to get to, but feel free to hit me up on Twitter. Jeremy, why do some previews go side by side and some are single? You're talking about over here in the preview window, that is just the orientation of the photo. If it's a vertical photo, you have room for 2 previews side by side. At least I think that's what you mean. Okay, last question. It is 12 noon, so if I'm not getting to yours, then hit me up on Twitter. Is there a way of selecting a particular value of gray to manipulate across the whole of the image? Because you're not actually manipulating the gray, you're manipulating the original color. The closest way to do that would be to choose the color sliders from those film sensitivities, the color sensitivities, and adjust those. That is going to be your best way to do that. Alrighty, that, ladies and gentlemen, is all I've got time for. I'm sorry to say it is 12 o'clock, or my time. I don't know what time it is where you are, but it is on the hour, and I must move on. Thank you so much for tuning in today.